Okay, so let's get started. Zok Tahelig Gemara.
Before you start, yes, the Gemara explaining all why the shear is two meals or two designers for meals or
I don't know if the Gemara said so explicitly, but I thought the reason is because normally you eat 2 meals a day. So when you want to say this is where I'm located for the day, 2 meals, Rashi does say that a Jew is located where his food is. That's what Rashi did say. Huh? Because on Shabbos you have 3 meals. Yeah, but Kubi, that's the bare minimum to locate you is 2 meals. If you serve me 2 meals, I'm coming. That's why by every wedding they have a smorg and a meal. Because in order to get a Jew to park, you have to serve 2 meals. That's why by all our simchas, we always have a herring and lekach and brofen in the front of the table, and then we have the kiddush. Because it's all about having 2 meals, and 2 meals is what attracts a Jew. So Zok Tehillah Gemara, Meisvei. So the last thing we discussed was how many apples does one need to make an erev? A kav. A kav is like, I think 4 or 5 liters. It's a significant amount. It's not just one apple. Frek the Gemara Meisvei. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Uchla Tavlin, the amount of spices that you would have to give, give to an ani is a shminish shebalitra. Rashi says that's it's an eighth of a lug. A lug is vav bayim, so an eighth of a lug is a little bit less than the size of an egg. The litra yerek, and a litra, which is a lug of a yerek, and a sora goyzin, 10 nuts, v'chamisha parsekin, and 5 peaches, u'shnei remoinim, and 2 pomegranates, the esrog echot. And this is talking about the minimum one should give to an ani. When someone's giving out his meiser ani, he has to give, it says v'nosan, the pasuk says. So you have to give something that's considered a nesina.
She goes to shul. The Kav Groigers and the Kav Groigers are pressed pigs. Going among the Vela, I think among the Vela's pressed pigs, Groigers are things like Groigers. Groigers Kiboimer, grass with Atzi, it would have to be a grass and a grass, a loy, grass with Atzi. That's the grass with Atzi. Grass with Atzi. You're right. Grass is going back on the Chati Lagayin and how much wine would have to be would have to be out. Liner reveals not having a loan for to reveal Shannon according to the Liner the sharp color and all other pairs how much you have to give to them. I'm going to have a show the day she moved here you got for hand wasn't this week. You have to give enough pairs so that if the owner would sell them, you have enough money to buy too much. If there is a double,
Huh?
can I disconnect?
Okay, disconnected. Oh, is there? Okay. No. No, this static is coming from because it's near this. No, the microphone, what happens is it's going into the computer and into Zoom. And then Zoom is playing on the screen.
I think it's getting two places.
Oh, that's where it's from. Hold on.
Getting from two places.
No.
But I have to get rid of the Zoom mic. I'm going to use this. Let's just shut this off. Okay, perfect. Okay, now we're good. Okay, so then I can plug this back in. Okay. I'm sorry, that's not the mic. Okay, Dr. Gemara back. Urvi Shamish of Kibar Bishnis of Shakal Paris, Amr Abashol, Kidishim Kem Vigach Behen Mosan Shtei Sudos. Voma Rav, and Rav said on this Brisa, or on this Mishnah, Rav said, V'chein Leif. Fact the Gemara, Umay Ulma, the Hai Mehach, what is the difference to Rabbi Yosef? If Rav said it here, or Rav said it there, it's really the same thing. Whatever is Mosan Shtei Sudos is what we need to use for an Erev. Ilema mishum dekoil. Ilema mishum dekatani bahach tavlin. The tavlin achilanu. If the reason why Rabbi Yosef objected to saying Rav's halacha on the first brisa, because the first brisa talks about spices, and spices aren't meals, and therefore they're not for an erev at all. In fact, Gemara, halacha me like katani chitinu sa'arin avlo in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yosef says Rav halacha. It also talks about items that are not food items. Chitin and sarin, raw chitin and raw sarin, you can't eat it, yet you can use it for an egg. So why would a tavlin be any different? El mitzum katani, chati loy. El mitzum katani. I'm sorry, so I have to take back what I said. The Gemara is you like a chitin the sarin, and clearly you cannot make an error in sarin. So Rabbi Yosef also has to admit that even though Rav said v'chein la'erev on the Mishnah, it's not referring to every single item. It's only referring to those things that are food items. So why can't we say Rav halacha on the Friedrich Brisa and just say it's not referring to the top? Ella, the reason why Rabbi Yosef must have objected to expressing Rav's halacha on the first brisa, Mishum Dekatani, Chatzi Lo Yayin. It says Chatzi Lo Yayin in his brisa. The Rav, and Rav happened to have specifically said, he explicitly stated, let me see the bottom. He specifically stated, the Shtei Reviyos Shal Yayin. So it's something that Rav had made a specific statement about, which makes sense that he was referring to that Mishnah. Since you need that much, Shemamina, ki Rav v'chein le'erev, ahamas nisan ka'amar Shemamina. Rav said you need shtei revios, which is a lot of wine. Where did he get it from? It must be because he was looking at this Mishnah, and it's this Mishnah that actually also said that the amount that you have to give to an ani is shtei revios. I'm just going to go back to where it says the chatzi lo yayin because of revius. So chatzi lo yayin is two revius. So since Rav spoke that out, Rashi said mishum dekatoni chatzi lo yayin the hainu shtei revios. The chatzi lo yayin that the Mishnah that Rabbi Yosef quoted says a chatzi lo, which is two revius. So shemanin lo Rav kabe'erev nami dekamachi. Since Rav actually said the same thing that the Mishnah says, and it's a pretty big amount of wine. That's how we know that Rav must have made a statement on the Mishnah. Shmamina. Amar Mar, uvamazon shtei sudois le'erev. You have to have enough food for two sudois for an erev. So Rabbi Yosef al-Meimar, ad ika suda mehai, usuda mehai. Rabbi Yosef at first thought that maybe you have to have, if you have two minim, for instance, you have to have a full suda of each min. But you can't have a whole bunch of different little things that you put together that makes up a suda. You have to have enough of even one min that one min will provide you with an entire suda. Rabbi said, I disagree. Even if each component of food that you have only represents a part of the meal, that's good enough, as long as you have enough for stay sudas. Gufa, Amarav. You could make an erev with two revias of wine. You need that much wine. Wine to eat. And Rashi explains that means if you would eat bread and you would dip it into the wine, you need enough wine to have two sudas of where you would dip the bread into the wine, and that's a lot less than two revias. Chometz, how much vinegar would you need? Only enough that for two meals you can dip olives into it. With Salem, and how many onions would you need? As much as you would eat for two sudas. So you see that you don't need two revias of wine, like Rav said. You see even a small bit of wine that's just enough to dip your bread into it for two sudas. That would be enough. So tomorrow it depends on what type of wine you're talking about. Hasam the chamim avashla. If it's a lower grade wine that people don't drink, it's yaim avushal, they only use it to dip, then you can use less of it because you only need the amount that you would need to dip for two sudas. But if you have the type of wine that one drinks, then you need to have enough wine for someone to drink for two sudas. Omar Mar. Now we're going to go back and analyze this price in greater detail. Choymetz kedei l'tabel boy. Omar Abgidol Omar Rav kedei l'tabel boy mozoin shtei sudas shel yerek. If you would have an entire, let's say all you had for lunch was salad, you didn't have anything else with it. So if you had a full meal that was consisted fully of vegetables, you need enough chometz to be a dressing for two full portions of salad, but portions of salad that would be enough to be an entire meal. You don't need to be able to have enough chometz to service so much salad that was the only thing you ate per meal. Rather, in a typical meal where you would eat multiple foods, different types of foods, as a side dish, you would also have some salad. You only need enough chometz to season those two small side salads. Omar Mar, Zaysim Ubetzelem, how about olives and onions? To have enough to have 2 meals worth of olives or 2 meals worth of onions. Can one make an erev with onions? Once upon a time, Reb Meir happened to have spent Shabbos in our diska. And someone came to him, because he was on his way traveling to a different area because he made an Erev Tchumen that would have extended his range. And Omer Loi, he told her mayor, Irafti bibitzelem letivin. I used onions to make an Erev Tchumen because my intent is to travel to Tivin. And Reb Meir said, sorry, sir, you cannot move. Reb Meir said, you have to stay with me. You can't move. Because the halacha is if someone finds himself offside, if someone finds himself out of his Erev, la halacha, he may not move out of his own dalaramis. So as soon as he asked Reb Meir, as soon as Reb Meir became aware that this fellow was out of his Erev, Reb Meir told him, you cannot move from this dalaramis. So you see, why did Reb Meir disqualify his Erev? Because he said he used onions, and clearly Reb Meir holds you cannot use onions for an Erev Tchumen. So like Asher, haba'alim haba'imois. You cannot use the leaves of an onion plant to make an Erev. However, you could use the bulbs, the onion part, that your avata allowed to use for an Erev. The Tanya, achel botzel. What happens if you eat an onion, the hishkin umes, and the next morning you died? Ein oimrim mimames. You don't ask anybody why he died. You know why he died. I'm not sure if this means if he ate it or if his neighbor or if his friend, like if his chavrusa died. If he ate onions and his chavrusa died, it's puzzled why the guy died. But here, I guess I didn't know you could suffer from your own bad breath. But Avada, this is not speaking about eating the onion. This is referring to eating the leaves of the onion. The leaves of the onion are toxic. Eating the onion itself, less lamba for carrot that we eat on Shabbos. It's an integral part of our foods. In fact, even that we say the leaves are toxic, it's not under all circumstances. Ella deloy ifsil zirsa. They didn't grow yet to the size of a zeres. A zeres is like a half a amma. If they've already grown and they're large plants, then they're no longer toxic. Ifsil zirsa less lamba. Omar Papa, this is mamish what we know. The only time onions are toxic if you don't make a l'chaim after them. If you make a l'chaim after you eat the tzvibel, less lamba, then there's no problem at all. I might argue for carrot, that's healthy. Tana Rabbanim. Lo yoichal adam botzel, a person should not eat a onion mipnei nacha shabai, because of the snake inside it. Rashi says, what is nacha shabai? Eres saraf habotzel, the poison inside the onion. Umaisa Rab Chanina, once upon a time, Rab Chanina she'achol chatzi botzel, he ate a half onion, the chatzi nacha shabai, and half of the poison. The chala, and he got sick. V'not alamus, and he was going to die. Uvikshu chavei of rachamim alav, his friends davened for him. V'choy, and he lived. Mipnei shatzot shrichaloi, because they needed him. So interesting to note, Rashi learns that the problem with onions, they have poison in it. So Tosfos doesn't like so much that Gemara says that he ate a half onion, so he ate half the poison. If onion is poison, so if you ate half the onion, you can eat half the poison. So because of that, Tosfos goes with the Pirush Harach, who says that the nacha shabai is not the poison that's all over the onion. There's a certain area, I think, towards the center of the onion, there's a strand of onion seeds, whatever that means, and those are the dangerous portions. So then it makes sense that Chanina ate a half an onion, and he also ate half of that nachash, which is the component that has the toxic chemicals to it, and that's why they had to daven for. Well, see, onions really keep people healthy, because if you eat onions, then by definition there's going to be social distancing. Right? It guarantees that. Zok Gemara. Amar Abzeir Amar Shmuel. Sheicher, beer. My Ravenbot, you could make an Erev with beer. Upoistelas a mikveh b'shloishes lubin. So anybody who builds a mikveh, Mati, you should know this, that right, Mati knows that if you're trying to fill a mikveh for the first time, and you don't yet have 40 saw of proper rainwater, if 3 lugin of mayim she'uven fall into it, that whole mikveh is possible. You got to drain it, dry it, and start all over again. However, once you have 40 saw in a mikveh, no matter how much water you'll pour into it, it won't postulate anymore. 40 saw is a good mikveh. But before you have 40 saw, you're in a very dangerous situation, because you have to make sure no water gets into that mikveh, because if it adds up to 3 lugin, it'll passel the mikveh. But that's only if water falls into a mikveh. If wine falls into the mikveh, everybody knows that whoever has been to a shiva house knows that if it looks like wine, then it doesn't pass the mikveh, right? That's one of the Mishnayos we learn. So wine wouldn't pass the mikveh, it's only water. So what it says is, you're allowed to make an erev with beer. It depends on whose beer you buy, but clearly it's saying beer will have a status of water, like I'll be passing a mikveh. Frek the Gemara, Maskav lo Rav Kahana. Pshita, of course it would. What's the difference between beer and colored water? So why do I need Reb Zera in the name of Shmuel to tell me that Sheikhar will pass on mikveh as a status of water? Why would it be any different than Meit Seva, which we have a Mishnah already that tells us it passes a mikveh? There, what do you call that water referred to in the Mishnah? You say it's colored water. But no one refers to beer as colored water. Everyone refers to it as beer. And therefore, you might have thought that it has a status of a separate mashka, and it's not considered water. Kamash Malon, Rab Zera and Shmuel, that it is considered water, and therefore it will pass al mikveh b'shlosh shalubim. Because no, the difference is I think the way you make beer is you soak hops in water, so it's primarily water. Wine is actually the juice that comes out of a grape, so wine is not water. Well, you want to know what if you dilute the wine?
Now you're telling me that I'm thinking about that.
If you dilute the wine, I assume as long as it's still called wine, it's considered wine. No, I hear. So you're asking. So we know pure wine for sure will not pass on mikveh. Right. And the question is, what's halacha with watered down wine? I don't know the answer to that. But sheikhar for sure, even though it's called sheikhar, Shmuel said a chiddush that we still consider it to be water, because essentially that's what it is. And how much sheikhar does one need to make an erev? You need 2 revius of beer. Where do you get that from? We learned in Shabbos how much. We learned if someone by mistake is moitzi a chevetz meshus l'shus, there is actually a minimum quantity of product that he has to transfer from meshus yachid to meshus rabbim or vice versa in order to be over the isser of itzah. So the Mishnah tells us in Shabbos, hamoitzi yain, how much wine does one have to carry from one rishus to another rishus that it should be considered itzah, that it would be machayiv and machatos? It's kedei mezigas hakois. He needs to have enough wine, pure raw wine, that would be adequate to make a full kos of wine out of. So we'll say you need enough concentrate to make a full kos of wine. V'tani Allah, and we learned kidei mezigas kos yafa. It has to be a nice kos. And what does that mean? My kos yafa. A kos shel bracha. A kos shel bracha is a revius, and you need to have enough raw wine so that you can dilute it enough to have a proper kos shel bracha, proper revius. Well, Omar Reb Nachman, how much is that? Reb Nachman, Omar Rabbi Barvu, kos shel bracha cherech sheheba roiva revius. You need pure wine, or we'll call it concentrate, a quarter of a revius. Kedei sheyim zegenu b'yamed al revius. When you dilute the wine and you put 3 parts water to 1 part wine, it will still be considered, or that's when it's considered wine. That's the normal way. The normal way to drink wine is to take raw wine, dilute it 3 parts water to 1 part wine, and then you'll have a revius. So you see that the shear of a normal drink is a revius. Uchadarava, Damarava, Kol Chamra, Deloy Dori, Al Chad, Klas Maya, any wine that is so concentrated that you didn't dilute it with 3 parts water to 1 part wine, Lav Chamarhu, that's not even considered wine. The Katani Seifa, and we learned in the Seifa of this brisa that teaches us about wine that it has to be a dilution of 1 to 4, and you need a quarter of a revius of raw wine, that the shar kol mashkin revius. All other mashkin that you don't dilute, the shears are revius, which is very consistent because wine, the serving size is also a revius. And the chol hashayvchen, even if we're talking about someone being moitzim reshus l'shus, dirty water, is also revius, which reinforces what Chaim Tzvi once said, that even water that you don't drink was choshev in those days. They actually saved it, and you're chayiv to be, if you're moitzit from one reshus to another reshus. So Zoktam Gemara, Mida Hasam, since regarding Yitzias Shabbos, Al Chad Arba, whenever you look at the shear required for wine, the shear of all other mashkin are 4 times that size based on this formula. So Hachanami Al Chad Arba. Therefore, he suggests, it was Sover of Acha Bered Rabbi Yosef Kamei Rabbi Yosef Lamemar betraying Rabbi Shechel with 2 revius, using the same ratio that the Mishnah in Shabbos discusses, that however much of wine you would have, you'd have 4 times that amount in other mashkin. That's where he got it from, because we know by wine we require a half a revius, and therefore it makes sense to say that for shechor you need 4 times that amount, which are 2 revius. But v'lohi, it's not a good raya from Yitzias Shabbos to how much you need for an erev, because hasam who the bottom hachi loy chashiv. When you're looking at Hilchas Shabbos, you need to be able to carry something that's a dover chashiv. It has nothing to do with your eating habits. It's all of looking at the item you're carrying. Is it a significant item? If it's a significant item, then you'll be chayiv if you're moitzit on Shabbos mershus l'shus. If it's not a significant item, then you will not be chayiv for it. And that's why we look at those ratios when you're talking about other mashkin. Aval hacha, but when you're discussing the shaila of Eruvin, loy. David inchi the shasi kasa b'tzafra, the kasa b'panya. It's normal. It's normal for someone to only have 1 kois in the morning and 1 kois in the afternoon, which would only be 2 revius in, and that's what he would live with, and therefore that would be good for an erev, even though what he's drinking in beer might not be considered a davar chashuv enough to be over if you carried it meshus on Shabbos. But since it's the normal amount that people would drink, clearly that should be good for an erev. Zokt Gemara Vayter, tomorrow in Bekama, how many dates must one have to use for an erev? Rabbi Yosef, tomorrow in Bekav, which is what we said regarding other fruits. Rabbi Yosef, we know Aminallah. How do I know that dates a kav is enough? Because we already learned. If we went back to the Bryce and Amanav, Gulat Vela, when it comes to figs, we said you need a kav. So, and we learned Ochal groigris. If someone ate truma, and the truma was groigris, was dates, so he has to pay back the coin. Vishilim tomorrow, and he paid back in dates. So I'm saying groigris are figs. He ate figs. Rashi says groigris was truma. He ate figs, pressed figs, I guess. Vishilim tomorrow, and he paid back in dates. Tova yalav bracha. He should be gebenched. Why should he get benched? You're making it sound like he gave back a greater value than he actually took. So let's analyze that. If you're telling me that he ate 1 zuz worth of groigris and he paid back 1 zuz worth of tamarim, my tavale of bracha. Bezuza achal, bezuza kamashalim. He's not giving back any more than he got. Elalav, what are you going to have to say? Lefemida, the achal munei guria de groigris, the shavi zuza. He ate a guria, which is a certain amount. I'm not sure exactly what that amount is, but he ate a certain amount of groigris that's worth a zuz. The kamashalim le guria tomorrow, and he paid back that same amount in dates to shavi arba, and that makes sense because he's giving back value that's 4 times what he actually ate. The katani tabil of bracha. Alma, you see from here that tomorrow madifi. You see tomorrow madifi. So if a kav of figs we learned earlier would be enough for an erev, surely a kav of dates, which is even more chashuv, should be good for an erev. I don't think there's no halva here. Why would there be a concern of ribis? But this is someone who ate truma by mistake. Yeah. So Dr. Gemara, Armor le Abaye, la'olam da'achol, you don't have a raya. La'olam da'achol minei bezuza, the kamashal mezuzah. You ate a zuz and you give back a zuz. So therefore, you don't have any raya that tamarim are more valuable than figs. So the problem was, if you gave back the same value that you took, why is it that we say tavei ala bracha? Umay tavei ala bracha. So tomorrow the achol minei midi the loy kafetz vina. You ate something that's not so easy to sell. It doesn't sell so fast. When you pay back the coin, midi the kavetz vina, something that it can sell very easily. So tavei bracha, because even though technically you didn't give him more value in money, but the fact is you gave him something that's more desirable. Shtisa. Shtisa is some type of porridge, Rashi says. It's a maichol she'oisin mikemach koli shenis yabesh betaner. So you took roasted wheat kernels and you made them into flour, and it has a Swedish type of flavor. And it's mixed with honey. So it's some type of porridge. How much of that would be considered a meal? Amar Rav Acha bar Pinchas, trei shargushi. Two tarbatfuls. Rashi says 2 spoonfuls. So the serving size of porridge are 2 spoonfuls. Kisani, Rashi tells us, are kloyos, actual roasted wheat kernels. How much of those are considered mozain suda? Amabaya, trebuni de pumbedisa. 2 measurements that were called a buni from the city of Pumbedisa. Amar Abaye said, Amar li aim. My mother told me, and we always know that when Abaye says Amar li aim, it's referring to the woman who raised him, because Abaye lost his mother. Hani kasani, these roasted wheat kernels, malu laliba, they're very good for your heart. Umavatli machshavto, and they get rid of bad thoughts, meaning daiga. If someone is stressed and worried, eating roasted wheat kernels calm you down. Where am I by it? Amr li aim. I find eating wheat products just makes me heavier. It didn't seem to calm me down. But Amr li aim. Hi man, there is like cholsha daliga. If someone has a weakness in his heart, he has a heart issue. Laisi bisra da atma yamina de dichra. He should take meat from the right thigh of a ram. The laisi kavuya de reisa de nisan. He should take manure that was dropped by cows in a field in the month of Nisan. The leka kavuya de reisa. If he can't get a hold of good old Nisan manure, laisi sugaini de arvasa. He should take a arava plant, v'nechave, and he should use the arava plant as a coal. I'm assuming this manure was going to be used as a coal as well, and on that you roast the meat of the leg of the ram, v'nechel, and you should eat that meat, and then v'nishne basrei charma marka, and after that you should drink wine that was properly diluted, and that's going to solve your heart problem.
One of these parts of the Gemara, like Gemara talks about value. They never talk about value. It's what a normal person eats. Like if you can eat a $3,000 steak, it's still not going to, even though it's this amount, but is that satisfying?
It's serving size that we're talking about.
It's serving size, except for that one Gemara above this one.
The Gemara was looking for a reference point. How much tomorrow should we eat? So the Gemara found that figs on Amud Aleph, the Rashi said on figs you have to eat a kav. So the Gemara is looking to compare dates to something similar. So the Gemara compares dates to figs. The Gemara is saying dates, the serving size of dates shouldn't be much different than the serving size of figs, because they're more choshev. So if anything, you would eat less of it, right? Right, because it's more choshev, you would likely eat less of it. So surely a kav of it would be enough. I think that's what the Gemara is trying to do. What do you more with? Depends who's paying. I hear it. I hear it. But the svara is good. We're comparing figs to dates, right? They're not very different from one another. And we know figs, you eat a certain amount, so it's logical to say that that amount would be adequate for dates. We're not comparing figs to caviar, right? I'm saying figs and dates I think they're pretty similar things. Okay, so we learned about what to do if you have a heart condition. Uh, that's a good singing. Okay. Sagt der Heilige Gemara weiter. Amar Rabbi Yehuda B'Shmuel, Kol Shu Lifton, any food product that you don't normally eat on its own, you eat it to accompany bread. Kedei lechel boy, it's not that you have to eat a full meal of that lifton. You only need enough lifton to be the same amount that you would typically eat in a typical meal when it was accompanying the bread that you ate it with. So again, it's a typical serving size of lifton. Kol she'eina lifton. If it's not lifton, it's not something that's made to eat with meat, or I'm sorry, to eat with bread. Rather, it's something you eat on its own. You have to eat enough of it so that that's what you would eat for a complete meal. So if it's lifton, and we're going to soon see from the Gemara, when something's lifton, it's actually more chashuv. If something's made to eat with bread, you can eat less of it. You only have to eat what a typical serving size would be. But if you eat something that's normally not eaten with bread, you have to eat a lot more of it. You have to eat enough of it that it in and of itself would be a full suda. So basar chai, how about raw meat? Where does that fit in? Zok the Gemara, kedei lechel himenu. That's something that would not be eaten with bread. So you'd have to eat enough raw meat, or you'd have to have enough raw meat for your erev that you would be able to eat 2 full meals based on that meat. Basar tzli, what if it's roasted meat? Then there's a machlokes. Rab Amar kedei lechel boy, and lechel boy is lifton. Since you're going to eat this roasted meat with bread, a little less of it in a full meal would be adequate for an erev. Rabbi Yosy Amar kedei lechel himenu. No, you have to have a full meal of meat, and not as if it's eaten together with bread. Amar Rabbi Yosef mina minallah. How do I know, Zok Rabbi Yosef? How do I know that you don't? How do I know that I don't eat this with lifton? I don't eat this as lifton. No, I eat this independently. Because these Persians, they eat roasted meat, they eat barbecued meat without any bread. So that proves that meat is not designed to be eaten with bread, and therefore you have to have a full meal of meat in order for you to have enough meat for an erev. You can't just have a small amount of meat, the amount you would put into a sandwich. Omar le Abaye. So Abaye commented to his Rabbi Yosef, Uparsoy have a Ruben Alma, the same shai that we had, just because the Persians eat this way, does that tell you that everywhere else you have to be machmer to have so much meat? I'll illustrate otherwise. But none, big de aniyim la'aniyim. When we're discussing how much fabric is required to become tamei, we say that an ani, he's machshav a smaller piece of fabric, and therefore for an ani, a smaller piece of fabric would become tamei. And Rashi says, big aniyim, shalosh al shalosh. If it's merely 3 fingers by 3 fingers, mekabel tumel aniyim, because that's a valuable piece of fabric to an ani, he can use it for a patch. But big de ashirim lashirim. An usher would not value a piece of fabric that's only 3 fingers by 3 fingers. It would have to be 3 tfachim by 3 tfachim in order for it to be considered a dover choshev, a beged for an usher. Aval big de ashirim. I'm sorry? So you're making a very good point. Now, but if the Gemara's raya is even anim and ashirim that are global, I'm sorry. Okay. So Dov is asking, what is the comparison between big de ashirim and big de anim to this issue where the Persians ate the meat in a certain way? The Persians are a small, isolated group of people. it's logical to say that their habits should not impact the rest of the world. But aniyim and ashirim, which are everywhere, it's more logical that they should impact the rest of the world. And it's a very good svara, but the Gemara is actually bringing a riot that you would actually agree with, because the Gemara is going to prove even there, the aniyim will not impact the ashirim and vice versa. So surely that small bit of population person should not impact the rest of the world. So the Gemara says, "Of big the ashirim laniyim loy begodim." Of a big the ashirim laniyim, but big the ashirim to an oni doesn't need a beged that's 3 tvachim by 3 tvachim to be tamei. An oni will even a smaller beged will be tamei. So you see that if ashirim don't impact aniyim, surely the Persians, which are even less common than ashirim, should not impact aniyim. Maybe you say we just go l'chumra. So by Erev, we're machmer that you need to have more meat in order to be able to have an Erev, and we're machmer even though there's only a small segment of the population that eats more meat. Mashenkin, when it comes to Tuma, will be machmer that it will be Tuma even with a smaller amount, and Oni is going to be, an Oni's beged will be Tuma even though it's only 3 fingers by 3 fingers. So if you want to say it's only the chumrish, you can't bring a raya. But Tanya, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Eimer, my Ravin l'chayla from Eruvin Gufa, you're allowed to a chayla or a zaken, they eat much less. So my Ravin l'chayla l'zaken kedei mizaynai, you're allowed to use a smaller amount of food to make an erev on behalf of a zaken or a chayla, because for them that smaller amount is considered a full meal. Uleravson, and for someone who eats a lot more than normal, b'suda beinin shel kol adam, his erev could even be a standard suda. So you see that you can go lakula. You see you're going lakula, because you might think that if you were going lachumra, a Ravson's erev would have to be a typical suda that the Ravson would eat, which would be much more. Yet you see from the brisa from Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar that you're makel, and even though only other people eat less amounts, it's still good enough to act as an erev for the Ravson. So Gemara kosher. Okay, so you have a point. Fact the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, did Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar actually say that a Ravson's erev is good even though it's not enough for him? Rather, it's a typical suda for everyone else. I'm going to show you that you actually have to pass on each person in his specific instance. Because Vatanya Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Eimer, Oig Melech HaBashan Pischai Kimeluvei. The halacha is, if there's a mace inside a home. Now, in the olden days, the doorways and windows were much thicker. They were thick stone. So there was actually, the doorway was actually almost a corridor. It could have been 6, 8, 12, even 18 inches deep, right? So the halacha is, the doorway of a home, if there's a mace in the home, anything in the home is tamei because it's the oil mace. The doorway is also considered part of the oil mace, and therefore anything that's in the doorway of a door that there's a mess in that house, that will also become tamei by oil mace, but not in windows. Why is that? Because the norm is when this mace is going to be removed from the home, he's going to go out through that doorway. So because of that, that doorway is considered tamei. Well, what if you have a whole bunch of doorways? What if you have a whole bunch of doorways? So the halacha is, normally, if they're all equal, they will all be tamei, because you don't know which doorway you're going to take the mace out of. So the halacha, if you have a huge person and he can't get out through any door, then you'll say that all of the doors become tamei, because since he can't get out of any one of the doors, even if there's a larger door, since he can't get out of any of the doors, it'll make all the doors tamei. Let's see Rashi. But Tanya, I'm sorry. Exactly, but since you don't know which door he's going out of, he can't fit through any doors. No, because you're going to have to get him out, right? So one of the doors is going to have to be expanded, and we don't know which one. Oh, that's what the Gemara is going to say. No, there was no doors. You want to know how he got in? I don't know how he got in. And the Rishonim saying we're not thinking about Oig Melech HaBashan because Oig was a guy. He's not tamei mace either. We mean he is a big guy. He came in skinny. He went into seclusion, and he was in seclusion in COVID. He ate and ate and ate. He gained weight, and now he died from COVID. He can't get out. That's right. That's mums with the cases. That's it. Pisach Kimelui. Lahatal al sharp sachim. If you have one door that he could fit through, that door becomes the designated door, and then all the other doors would be tar. The leka pesach, the chazulei, if there's no door that this person will fit through, then kol chur mole egroiv shebik salim tmeim. Any hole in the walls that you can even get a fist through will become tummy. So Abaye said you can't bring a rye from there. Hasam heichelavid hadumi nadame v'nafkai. You expect to chop up the corpse into small pieces and take it out? There it's different. There physically you can't get it out of any door. There is no door here. Iboilu. Do the Rabban argue on Reb Shimon ben Elazar regarding this halacha of Pischai Kimiluya or not? Toshma. Damar Rabba Bavachan Amar B'Yochanan Oig Melech Habashain Pischai Be'arba. His door is a regular door. In other words, even if someone's huge there, if there's a normal doorway, even though he can't get out of that doorway, we still say that that's the doorway that becomes Tomei. Zoktamar Hasam, the Ika Psachim Ktanim Tuva, the Ika Chad Davarba. If there's many small doors, and we're talking, where did the Shimon Elazar say halacha when all the doors are the same size? Can't get through any of them. But if you have a whole bunch of small doors and you have one door that's bigger, which is exactly what Duvi said, the Vada Kika Marvach Bahuka Marvach. You're going to have to expand one of the doors to get them out. Which door are you going to pick? Obviously, the largest door. So there's less work involved in expanding that doorway. So you don't have a raya that anybody argues on Reb Shimon ben Elazar. If there's one door that's larger, maybe everyone is moida that that's the door becomes tamei. But if all the doors are the same size, then they all become tamei. Amar B'chi bar Rabashi, Amar Rav. My Rav the basar chai, you're allowed to use raw meat. Amar B'sim bar Chia, my Rav the beitzim chai, you're allowed to use raw eggs because b'shas tak people will eat those as well. The Kama, how many eggs must there be? Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar Achas, Sinai, who's I believe Rabbi Yosef, Amar Shtayim, it would have to be 2 eggs in order to be able to make an Erev. Okay, this will stop.
Rich